Hello friends, welcome to this video. My name is Shahab, and in this video I want to speak about the validation services. By using these validation services, we can check the requests and validate them. In fact, each request to the server before any processing needs to validate, and if the request contains an error, it will be rejected immediately. This approach has some benefits, first in case of the security and second in case of the performance. It is not necessary to go forward some steps and then understand one of the data has a problem. Therefore, validation is one of the most important parts of the AUA framework. In conclusion, when you are creating a service, be sure about the validation in it. For example, here inside the student controller we have a function which is insert, and this function gets an input which is the student DTO, but there is no validation on this input, and this can be dangerous for the application. So to do validating these entries, we need to take some actions, and the process is like this. First of all, you need to go to the services inside the validation service. Here I need a folder for the module of school. Inside this folder I need a folder for the entity of student. I will call it student validations. Here you need to separate the entities. For each entity, it's better to create separate folder and do the process. Well, here inside the student validation folder, I need two other folders. Contracts, and the other one is the service. Now here I need an interface. I will call it I insert student DTO validation service. Here take a look at the naming pattern. Insert is the name of the action is insert, and then the name of that DTO, that entity, and also the validation service of the that. Each interface of validation service will return a validation result VM. Well, I will call it validation and an input which is student DTO. Then the service each validation service needs to inherit from base validation service. And also needs to inherit from the interface. Well, to make it easy for myself, let me create student DTO it needs to return the validation result bin. And here I will make a function. I will name it do validation, and here is the body. And what the do validation function is doing? First of all, we need to call a function which is fix values. I call it fix values, and its body. This function helps to fix some errors. For instance, the user forget to enter the first zero of the mobile number, or same issues with the date and so on. Here you can put that code to fix those errors. And the other function that do validation will call it is default validation. Default validations. And its body, and we do it like this. If is empty is a function which you can find it inside the base validation. Here is empty, and also add error. These are some functions there that built in or inside the base validation service. You can add some other functions based on your necessities. Well, is empty student service dot first name. If the first name is empty, add error here. The first is the name of that issuer, which is first name here, and the second is the message of that error. For example, here first name is empty. Let me do the same for the last name. And also for the age. If the age is less than or equal to 0. Well, what was the issuer? The age and the message. For example, age is not valid. Okay, we did this, and you can put some other validations here. In case of any error, for example, inside this validation we have got some errors, so you need to prevent the continuing of the process. Here I can put, after for example this validation, default validation, I can put this if statement. Has error, if has error, then return. By this you prevent to do the other validation. Now it's time to inject this service. Inside the registration service and inside the validation service, let me copy these two lines and paste them here. Its name is school validation service, and and registration inside the registration validation service. Now it's done. The final step is inside the controller area, school and student controller. Here I need to inject that service. Well, here inside the action, validation, result VM, this is built in inside the AUA framework, is equal to that service dot validation, and I will pass the student DTO to this. Then if has error, then return create invalid result. And the type of the key was int. Well, let's run it, but before that, to prevent the login process, let me comment these two. Okay, now inside the student, and this is the insert. As you see here, these are some nested objects here. The teacher and also student teachers, but I want to fill just the student entity here. Therefore, let me remove the other objects from here. And for the last name, I will not to fill it, and age is 0. So its success here is false, and these are the errors. Error message is last name is empty, the issuer was last name, and also about the age. The issuer was age and it is not valid. So let me enter some data correctly. First name, for example, John. And the age. Okay, now its success is true and there is no errors. And the result is the ID of that student, which is 13. When you are inserting nested objects, like here, for example, here you are inserting the student, then the student teachers, and then the entity of teacher. Well, here you need to enter the ID correctly for this, and also for the teacher. If not, you will get an error. For example, here, let me put them correctly. Age 11, last name, for example, last name 11, first name something like FN11. Okay, I will remove this ID from here, or also this from here. Now let's see the error. Well, you will get an error like this. it cannot find the key. So you need to be careful about these types of nested objects. There are some important concepts about the validation services that you need to pay attention to them. First of all, levels of validation. There are 3 levels of validation inside the AUA framework. Level 1 is to validating a view model or entity DTO, which we did here inside the insert student. We validated the DTO here. This is the level 1. The second one is those that needs to an IO. For example, when you want to insert an user and you want to be sure that the username is unique. Let me show it here. For example, here inside the accounting module and inside the app user validations, and here app user insert. Here is the function of do validation, and after all of these, the validation username will appear. It will filter that username. If it exists, it will return that error. Well, and the third one is those that need to external services. Well, there are some other nodes that you need to pay attention to them. For example, in level 2, I mean the level 2 of validation. When you are using the second level, you will need some data. Well, try to send them with the request to prevent using the IO. This approach helps to keep the performance suitable and interactive. Also, use separate validation services for each entity DTO or view model. Here we did that for the student. And the last, in case of nested view models or entity DTOs. For example, here, this student DTO has relation with the student teachers. Through this student DTO, you can fill this table, and also through this, you can fill the teacher entity. Well, in this situation, you can inject those validation services inside here and use them. Therefore, we can inject the related validation service inside the current validation service and use it. Well, thank you for watching.